Hello, my name is Linda Shelly, and I work as Director for Latin America with Mennonite Mission Network, and I'm very happy this afternoon to have with me via Zoom Deb Byler. Deb, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay. I live in Guatemala and work with the Kekchi Mennonite Church here. There are about 140 churches, and I work with the women leaders. Normally, when we're not having a coronavirus outbreak, I travel a lot and do teaching and accompany women in their leadership roles with women's meetings, larger gatherings of churches. I also do writing, and especially now during this time, I'm doing a lot of writing.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot has changed during this period of time. Are there any known cases of COVID-19 among the Kekchi?
At this point, there are not. I don't think it's here even unrecognized. I have not, in my conversations, my phone conversations with people, I've not heard people talking about people getting sick or people dying. So I don't think it's here, but there definitely are no confirmed cases.
Oh, that's great to hear. And I know from what I've read, Guatemala really shut down very soon after cases were discovered within the country, and I imagine that's made a difference. What are you hearing about the country as a whole?
Well, the president of Guatemala is a doctor, and he shut down the country almost as soon as there were any cases of the coronavirus. He shut all the businesses and restaurants and anything except grocery stores and pharmacies, and some of the banks are still open. He shut down all the commercial centers, which are like malls, and ordered people to stay at home except for essential things that they had to take care of. And gradually, the restrictions have gotten tighter as the virus has spread, but there are still, the last I heard, there were under 200 cases of the virus, and only a few people have died from the virus here, as far as they know. Some of the tighter restrictions are that people can't leave their department, which is like a state or a region of the country. So we can't travel to other areas of Guatemala. And just this past Sunday, he made new restrictions and is not allowing people who are 60 years old or over to leave their home at all. So I'm going to have to find ways to get groceries and to get money and to get my medication. And so that's a difficult thing for me, these new restrictions. Anyone who does go out has to go out with a mask. And people here, I haven't heard them complaining. They seem to understand the necessity of these restrictions. Although a lot of the Kekchi people have told me that they don't think the virus will come to this part of Guatemala ever. And that would be nice, but I have a feeling that it probably will eventually get here. But we don't know when, of course, or how, or any of those kinds of things, that we're all living with the unknown.
Yeah.
And the people here are living with that as well.
Yeah. And you're living with a lot of restrictions. You've mentioned some of those, and I'm sure for the churches too, that means not meeting. Right. For you, it means not leaving the house, certainly not traveling out to where the women are and being a part of the women's groups there. how are you able to communicate with people that you work with the church leaders?
I keep contact with people by phone. Usually it's me calling them because they don't always have money to put minutes on their phone, but sometimes they call me to see how I'm doing, and that's nice too.
Yeah,
But it's exclusively through phone calls.
yeah. And I'm sure that's how they're communicating with each other as well within the church. Have you heard anything more from the churches and what they're doing in their own communities, or how people are able to support each other?
Yes, it is partly through phone calls, but I have a couple of pastor friends, and one of them's planting season has started where she lives, and she is going to homes to pray for the corn and the planting process the day before. We have a curfew from 4 o'clock in the afternoon until 4 o'clock in the morning. So she can't go in the evenings like they normally do. They normally go the evening before the planting. They plant in community, and they don't know any other way to plant other than in community. They never just go out, the people of the house, and plant themselves. And I've talked with the president of the church, and he and the other leaders there are 6 regions in the church, and there's a representative from each region that is on a board with the president of the church. And they're talking about how to give guidance during this time, that they wouldn't have all the women and children getting together to make the meal and celebrate together. And so they're putting some restrictions on that, or at least giving guidance to the people in the churches about that. There's no public transportation, so people can't travel from one region to the other except by walking. And there are no church services allowed. And most Mennonite churches are following that, but I did hear of a couple of churches that were meeting, having smaller gatherings. Personally, I don't think that's a good idea, but I know that a couple of churches are doing that.
And what work have you been able to do from home during these weeks?
Writing and translating. That's the only work I can do right now, other than calling people on the phone and trying to provide support for them through phone calls. I'm working on a series of lessons on what the Bible says about women. And I've got quite a few lessons lined up. I've got 4 of them done. I'm also working on booklets of a series of lessons on suffering and what the Bible says about suffering. I'm working with Kekchi woman on a series on being a good mother and a good wife. Since I'm not a mother or a wife, I'm single. I felt I shouldn't write those lessons, but I'm working with her, and we're working on that. And so that's fun to check in with her fairly often. And she's doing a good job. She's reading to me what she's written, and she's doing a good job with it. I've made a few suggestions for additions, but we worked together before on a writing project, and she did it, came to my house and did it so that I could give her a lot of guidance. And this time she's doing it with much less guidance. So it's a good learning experience for her. And it's fun to work together on that project.
I'm sure it's really different doing that with phone calls than having somebody right in your home working.
Yes.
Yes.
Different.
And when you are able to resume relating personally with people and traveling, what are some of the things that you hope to be able to do?
I look forward to seeing the women and going out and doing teaching again. I have 9 different regions where I travel and do teaching. And I really enjoy that. I travel with the Kekchi woman and we do the presentation together and work with the women together. The women, this is women leaders that we work with the teachings. And seeing people, this is not a culture that does a lot of hugging. And when we do go out, we probably won't be able to do that right away. But I just look forward to being close to the people and would want to help them. But like I said, that probably won't be a good idea right at first. But yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. Sitting and eating and sharing and laughing will be fun.
Yeah, yeah. What gives you hope?
The faith of the Kekchi people, and their dedication to prayer, they are really giving themselves to prayer during this time. The president, when he made his first announcement about closing things down, called a day of prayer and fasting for that first Saturday. And many people that I know in that time of prayer and fasting. And that's something that they do here regularly. There was last week, news came on the radio that was very confusing for the Kekchi people. People were calling in and saying there was a miracle and that people were finding hair in their Bible, and that if you put that hair in water and drink it, you will be saved from the coronavirus. You won't get it. And one of the women called me that evening when all that was happening, and pastors were calling in and Catholic leaders were calling in and saying they found hair, and they were all excited. And she was excited. She was all worked up. She's one of the younger leaders that I work with. And I didn't say a lot. I just encouraged her to pray about it and do some discernment on what God might be saying to her about it. And I wanted to talk to other Kekchi people to see what wisdom they had on it. So the next day I talked to a couple different Kekchi leaders that are older and more mature and more experienced, and they saw it as a deception. I talked to this woman again, and she was still excited about it and worked up about it. And I again encouraged her to discern and to keep praying, and I kept praying for her. And when I talked to her last Saturday, she said that a couple of different people had called her, a couple of different pastors, and also she had talked to one of the women leaders that we worked together in a group. And they had all told her that this is not from God, and that she should not be taken in and deceived, but should give herself to prayer and to trusting in God for God's healing and preservation in this time. And she said she didn't believe it. And I was encouraged. It gave me hope that people are caring for each other, that they're being sensitive with each other, and that they're finding their way in a difficult situation where they're tempted to rely on something that I think is not of God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that sort of hones in on their beliefs and their worldview. And so I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful the church will grow through this time. I believe they will, and I believe I will too.
Are there other things that you'd like to share?
One thing comes to my mind when I talked to this young woman leader on Saturday. I asked her how their markets were because since there's no travel, no public transportation, people can't get their produce into the town here where I live. And so they have it out in the country to sell, but I was just wondering how the situation was. And she shared that also they have to wear masks, and so they have to buy those masks. Her husband normally works and earns money. He doesn't just farm like some of the Kekchi men do. And she said they have money for now. They can buy masks, but they're going to run out of money if this goes on very long. And so she's concerned about money and running out of money. And that's a concern that I have. The two concerns I have for the Kekchi people are this situation of the corn planting, and if the virus does come into this region, I'm afraid that that's going to be, they'll spread it. And the other thing is that they may run out of money. And the president said he would provide cloth masks that can be washed for the people during this time, and I haven't heard anything more about that, about people out in the country getting those, but that would be really important to help them save money. It costs a little under $1 to buy a mask, but that's a lot of money for the people here. They don't make much money. So a little under $1 is a lot of money for each time. And they are supposed to wear a different mask every time they go out, though I doubt if they will do that.
Yeah. A lot of people here are making cloth face masks. Is that something you've seen people doing there? Well, I guess you can't leave the house, so you probably wouldn't see a lot of that on the street with what kind of masks people are wearing. But here in Newton, Kansas, we see all kinds of colorful masks made of cloth.
Yeah. No, the masks I saw before when I was out walking were not homemade masks. I didn't see homemade masks.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's good talking with you, and appreciate your report, and we'll certainly be praying for you too as you work from home during this time with the various writing and translating projects and communicating with people by phone. And thank you also for the prayer requests for the Kekchi people, both in staying safe from this virus and then also in getting the corn planted and in not running out of money during this time of needing to stay at home. And we are praying for the country of Guatemala as well as more broadly with this with the global challenge that we're facing. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.